I noticed it by accident, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne on her scarf, a message that flashed on her phone screen while she was in the shower, her sudden work meetings in the evenings. Small things, but betrayal is always built from small things. 6 years of marriage to Amana had settled into a comfortable routine. We met in graduate school. I studied architecture, she studied art history. Our romance developed rapidly. Museum dates, late-night conversations about the future, passionate embraces in my tiny apartment. We married a year later. I thought I knew her better than anyone. How wrong I was. The first suspicions appeared last fall. Amana started staying late at work. Nothing unusual. The gallery where she worked as a curator often held evening events. But then she began turning off location services on her phone, stopped talking about work events. One day I called the gallery to find out when she'd be free, and they told me she'd left 2 hours earlier. Is everything okay? I asked that evening when she came home with flushed cheeks and bright eyes. Of course. Just tired, she replied, avoiding my gaze. Stopped by Maggie's after work. Maggie was her friend from university. I nodded and pretended to believe her. The following weeks turned into agonizing waiting. I hated myself for starting to spy on her, checking her messages when she showered, analyzing credit card statements, looking for clues in her conversations. It was humiliating, but I couldn't stop. Something intangible had changed between us. She seemed to be drifting away, like a ship leaving shore. On Thursday, I found a receipt from a restaurant she hadn't mentioned. Dinner for two, expensive wine. The date matched one of her work meetings. I felt everything inside me contract with pain and anger. That same evening, she received a message while we were watching a movie. She quickly read it and put her phone away, but I caught the sender's name, Daniel. She had never mentioned any Daniel. Who's that? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. New gallery client, she answered too quickly. Interested in contemporary art? I nodded, pretending to believe her, but something in her voice, in the way she avoided my eyes, told me it was a lie. The next day, I took time off without telling her, parked 2 blocks from the gallery and waited. She left during lunch break and got into a taxi. I followed them across town to a small restaurant in an area where we never went. A man was waiting for her there, tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit. They embraced, too long for mere acquaintances. He kissed her cheek, almost touching her lips. I took several photos through the restaurant window, feeling pathetic and broken. For 2 hours, I watched them talk, laugh, watched him touch her hand. Amana looked happy, happier than I had seen her in a long time. When they left the restaurant, he put his arm around her waist, and they got into a taxi together. I didn't follow them. I didn't want to know where they were going. Some things are better not seen with your own eyes. Back home, I sat in the dark, considering my options. Confrontation? Silence? Divorce? Each option seemed worse than the last. I loved her. Despite the betrayal, despite the pain, I still loved her. When she returned that evening, I said nothing. Watched her take off her coat, talk about an exhibition she supposedly attended. Every word was a lie, and I saw it so clearly, as if the lies materialized in the air between us. For a week, I remained silent, watching her live a double life. She started staying out later, sometimes not coming home overnight, citing business trips. I checked the gallery had no business trips scheduled. On Saturday, she said she was going to a conference in Boston for 3 days. I knew it was a lie. I followed her to the airport and saw her meet him, Daniel. They checked in together for a flight to Miami. Returning home, I started researching this man, Daniel Reynolds, owner of a chain of contemporary art galleries. 42, divorced, no children, wealthy, successful, handsome. The complete opposite of me, a modest mid-level architect mired in routine projects. For 3 days, I lived as if in a dream. worked, ate, slept all on autopilot. Inside was emptiness, filled with quiet rage. I imagined them together on the beach, in a hotel, at dinner. Imagined her laughing, allowing him to touch her. These thoughts ate me from within. When she returned, tanned and rested, I greeted her with a smile, listened to stories about a non-existent conference, pretended to believe every word. How was the conference? I asked, pouring her wine. Great. Lots of useful contacts, new ideas for the gallery. She spoke quickly, avoiding details. Meet anyone interesting? She froze for a second, then smiled. Just boring art critics. I nodded and sipped my wine. How was the weather in Boston? I heard it rained all week. Yes, had to carry an umbrella everywhere. She replied without blinking. Miami had been sunny all week. I had checked the weather forecast. For another month, I lived with this knowledge, watching her slip between two lives. I began noticing details, new perfume, lingerie I'd never seen before, mysterious smiles when she checked her phone. She was blooming, but not for me. I tried to understand where I went wrong when our marriage began to crumble. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I became inattentive. Or perhaps I simply bored her. At night, I lay beside her, listening to her breathing, wondering, does she think of him when she closes her eyes? On Thursday, she announced another business trip, this time to Chicago, for a week. I knew it was another lie, but I nodded and wished her a good trip. When the door closed behind her, I took out a bottle of whiskey and drank half of it, trying to numb the pain. The next day, I didn't go to work, called and said I was sick. It was true, I was sick from betrayal, from humiliation, from helplessness. I spent the whole day looking through our old photos, trying to understand when everything went wrong. In the evening, my phone rang. A known number. Hello? I answered, expecting a telemarketer or automated message. Hello, this is Daniel Reynolds. The voice was deep, confident. The voice of a man accustomed to getting what he wants. I froze. My heart was pounding, so hard I thought he might hear it through the phone. I know you're aware of the situation, he continued. Amana told me you've been following us. So she knew. All this time she knew that I knew, and continued the game. What do you want? I asked, surprised by the calmness of my voice. The talk, man to man. I'll be at the Blue Oyster Bar in an hour. Come if you want to hear the truth. He hung up without waiting for an answer. I spent the hour in a stupor. Part of me wanted to ignore the invitation. Another part dreamed of meeting him face to face. In the end, curiosity and anger won. The Blue Oyster Bar was in a trendy part of town. I'd never been there, too expensive for my budget. Entering, I immediately saw him sitting at a corner table, sipping something from a crystal glass. Thank you for coming, he said when I sat across from him. What would you like to drink? The same as you, I replied, though I had no idea what he was drinking. He called the waiter and ordered another glass of something expensive. I looked at him, trying to understand what Amana saw in this man. Yes, he was attractive, confident, successful, but there was something else about him, some inner strength that I never had. I'm not going to apologize, he began when the waiter left. Amana and I love each other. It happened unexpectedly for both of us. How romantic. I couldn't contain my sarcasm. You called me to tell me how much you love my wife. He shook his head. I called you because I think you deserve to know the truth. Amana is filing for divorce. She's moving in with me. The words hit me like a physical blow. I knew this was happening, but hearing it out loud was something else entirely. When was all I could ask. She's already moved some things. She'll get the rest when she returns from her trip. So there was no trip to Chicago. She was just moving her things to his place while I wasn't home. Why are you telling me this? Why not her? He took a sip from his glass. She's afraid of your reaction. Says you can be unpredictable. I laughed bitterly. Unpredictable? I'm the most predictable person in the world. Every day the same work. Home, dinner, TV, sleep. Maybe that's the problem. He looked at me with unexpected sympathy. Listen, I know this is hard, but sometimes people just outgrow relationships. That doesn't make anyone a bad person. Don't lecture me about morality, I snapped. You're sleeping with someone else's wife. Technically, she won't be someone else's wife soon, he noted. I wanted to hit him, wanted to grab the glass and smash it against his smug face. But instead, I sat paralyzed by pain and humiliation. There's something else you should know, he continued after a pause. Amana is pregnant. The world stopped. Time froze. I stared at him, not sure if I'd heard correctly. What? She's pregnant. 2 months. We plan to get married as soon as your divorce is finalized. I don't remember leaving the bar. Don't remember getting home. I only remember sitting on the living room floor all night, staring into space. In the morning, I started acting, called a lawyer, then the bank, withdrew half the money from our joint account, my legal share, packed essential belongings, wrote a short note and left it on the kitchen table. I know everything, leaving the keys. Happiness to you, Daniel, and the baby. Then I got in my car and drove anywhere, just away from the house that was no longer mine. I spent 3 days in a motel on the outskirts of town, not answering calls or messages. Amana tried to reach me several times, but I ignored her. What else could be said? On the 4th day, I decided it was time to move on. Literally, packed my things, filled the gas tank, and hit the highway heading west. I'd always wanted to see the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, the Pacific Ocean. Now nothing was holding me back. Passing the sign indicating I was leaving the city, I felt a strange relief, as if the weight pressing on my chest had eased slightly. I turned on the radio, and the DJ announced the next song, starting over by a band I'd never heard before. I laughed at the irony. After 2 hours of driving, my phone rang again. Amana. I almost hit decline, but something stopped me. Maybe I wanted to hear her voice one last time. Maybe I wanted her to know how deeply she'd hurt me. Hello, I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. Finally, I'm going crazy. Where are you? She sounded worried, but I no longer believed in her sincerity. On the road. Leaving. Where? Listen, we need to talk. Daniel shouldn't have, but he did. I interrupted her, and I'm grateful to him for his honesty, more than to you. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Amana. You found someone better, richer, more successful, more interesting. Now you're having a baby together. I wish you happiness. Really? The baby might be yours, she said quietly. I braked sharply and pulled over. What did you say? I don't know whose child it is. Could be yours, could be his. I'm confused. I closed my eyes, trying to process what I'd heard. And you still chose him. He offered me the life I always dreamed of. Travel, art, freedom, and I offered you love, I said. Apparently that's not enough. She was silent. I could hear her breathing, imagined her biting her lip, a habit that appeared when she was nervous. I'm sorry, she finally said. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. And you know what? I'll survive this. I'll be okay. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I wanted to believe it. What will you do? He asked. Start over. Somewhere far from here. We were silent for a while longer, and I realized there was nothing more to say. Goodbye, Amana. Goodbye, she whispered. And good luck. I hung up and turned off the phone, then threw it out the window. A symbolic gesture, but it brought strange satisfaction. Starting the engine, I pulled back onto the highway. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and purple hues. Ahead was the road, endless and unknown. Behind 6 years of life turned to ashes. I didn't know where I was going, didn't know what awaited me ahead. I only knew that I wouldn't look back again. Sometimes an ending is just the beginning of something new. Sometimes you need to lose everything to find yourself. The radio played played some old song about freedom and the open road. I turned up the volume and pressed the gas. Ahead was only the horizon, and I was ready to meet it with an open heart. Maybe someday the pain would subside. Maybe I would learn to trust again. Maybe somewhere out there, a new life, new love, new opportunities were waiting for me. Or maybe I would just drive until I found a place I could call home. But one thing I knew for certain, I would no longer live someone else's life, wouldn't cling to what was already lost, wouldn't look back. The road was calling me forward, and I was ready to answer that call. 3 months on the road changed me more than 6 years of marriage. I drove west until I hit the Pacific, then south along the coast, stopping in small towns with names I'd never heard before. Each morning I woke up in a different motel. Each evening I watched the sunset from a different beach. The constant movement kept the pain at bay. I found temporary work wherever I could: construction sites, restaurants, even a fishing boat for a week. Physical labor exhausted my body enough that my mind could rest. At night, I'd sit on whatever porch or balcony my temporary lodging offered, nursing a beer and watching the stars, wondering if Amana was looking at the same sky. In a small coastal town called Seacliff, I stopped for longer than usual. Something about the place spoke to me: the rugged cliffs, the small artist community, the way the fog rolled in every morning like a soft blanket. I rented a cabin on the beach and found work with a local builder who specialized in restoring old homes. "You've got a good eye, Jack," the builder told me after I suggested a design modification that saved both money and improved the aesthetics. Ever thought about going back to architecture? I hadn't. Architecture reminded me of my old life, of dreams shared with Amana, of a future that no longer existed. "Not really," I replied, hammering a nail with more force than necessary. "Shame. Talent shouldn't go to waste because of heartbreak." I looked up, surprised. I hadn't told anyone here about my past. Jack shrugged. I recognized the look. Had it myself once. Wife of 15 years left me for her yoga instructor. He laughed without humor. Cliché, right? Anyway, whatever she did to you, don't let it define you. At night, I pulled out my old sketchbook for the first time since leaving. The pages were filled with designs and dreams: a house I'd planned to build for Amana and me someday, concepts for public spaces, ideas that once excited me. I started drawing, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. By morning, I had filled 10 pages with a design for a cliffside studio. 2 weeks later, I was still in Seacliff. I'd started freelancing, creating architectural designs for local homeowners looking to renovate. Word spread quickly in the small community, and soon I had enough work to rent a small office space in town. I was sketching a design for a local artist studio when my new phone rang. Only a handful of people had this number: Jack, a few clients, the landlady of my cabin. I answered without checking the caller ID. "Hello." Silence. "Then I found you." Amana's voice hit me like a physical blow. I nearly dropped the phone. "How did you get this number? Does it matter? I've been looking for you for months." I closed my eyes, fighting this surge of emotions her voice triggered. "Why?" "Because we need to talk. Because you disappeared without giving me a chance to explain. Because," she paused, "because I had the baby. My heart skipped a beat. And she's yours. The DNA test confirmed it last week." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of my desk, suddenly dizzy. "I have a daughter? Her name is Lily. She's beautiful." Amana's voice softened. "She has your eyes." I couldn't speak. A daughter. I had a daughter I'd never seen, never held. "Where are you?" Amana asked. "I want you to meet her." I can't." I struggled to form coherent thoughts. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I tried. I called your old number hundreds of times. I hired a private investigator. I've been searching for months. What about Daniel? A name still tasted bitter on my tongue. She was quiet for a moment. He left when the DNA results came back. Turns out he was more interested in having his own child than raising someone else's. I couldn't summon any sympathy. So now you want me back? Now that your perfect life fell apart? No, she said firmly. I'm not asking for us to get back together. That bridge is burned. But Lily deserves to know her father, and you deserve to know your daughter. I looked out the window at the ocean, watching waves crash against the cliffs. The life I'd built here over the past months felt suddenly fragile, like a sandcastle at high tide. I need time to think. Of course, she said, but don't take too long. She's growing every day. After hanging up, I walked to the beach and sat on the sand for hours, watching the tide come in. A daughter. I had a daughter. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. That night, I called Jack and told him everything. What are you going to do? He asked after listening patiently. I don't know. Part of me wants to see my daughter. Another part is afraid to face Amana again. The way I see it, you've got 3 options, Jack said. 1. You ignore the call, stay here, and wonder for the rest of your life what your daughter looks like. 2. You go back, try to reconcile with your ex, and potentially get your heart broken again. Or 3, you find a way to be a father without getting entangled with your ex. Is that even possible? People co-parent successfully all the time. It's not easy, but it's doable. I thought about it for days, drew countless sketches of what my daughter might look like. Imagine teaching her to ride a bike, to swim, to draw. Imagined missing her first steps, her first words, her first day of school. A week later, I called Amana back. I want to meet her, I said without preamble. But I'm not coming back to stay. I've built something here, a new life. I want to be part of Lily's life. But you and I, that chapter is closed. She was quiet for a moment. I understand. When can you come? We arranged for me to visit the following weekend. I would stay in a hotel, meet Lily, and we would discuss how to move forward. The drive back east was very different from my journey west. Then, I'd been running away with no destination in mind. Now, I was driving towards someone with purpose and determination. Seeing Amana again was strange. She looked different, tired, with dark circles under her eyes, her hair cut short in a practical style. Motherhood had changed her in subtle ways. She met me at her apartment door, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "This is Lily," she said softly, pulling back the blanket to reveal a perfect, tiny face. I stared transfixed. She was so small, so perfect. Dark hair like her mother's, but her eyes when she opened them briefly were unmistakably mine. "Can I hold her?" My voice cracked. Amana nodded and carefully transferred the warm bundle into my arms. Lily squirmed slightly, then settled against my chest. Something profound shifted inside me, a tectonic movement of the heart. "Hello, Lily," I whispered. "I'm your dad." The next few days were a crash course in fatherhood. Amana showed me how to change diapers, how to prepare bottles, how to soothe Lily when she cried. We talked about practical arrangements, child support, visitation, how to make this work with thousands of miles between us. "You could move back," Amana suggested tentatively on my last night in town. I shook my head. "I can't. That life is over for me. But I'll visit often, and when she's older, she can come stay with me." "In your beach cabin?" There was a hint of the old Amana in her skeptical tone. "I'm designing my own house," I told her, "on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. It will have a room just for her." On my last morning, as I prepared to leave, Amana handed me a small box. "What's this?" "Open it later," she said. I put it in my pocket and said goodbye to Lily, promising to return soon, knowing she couldn't understand, but needing to say the words anyway. Back on the road, I pulled over at a rest stop and opened the box. Inside was a tiny silver silver frame containing a picture of Lily sleeping and a note in Amana's handwriting. "I'm sorry for everything. I made terrible mistakes and hurt you deeply. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday we can find peace for Lily's sake. She deserves parents who respect each other, even if they couldn't make love last." I stared at the photo for a long time, then placed it carefully on my dashboard. The drive back to Seacliff seemed shorter somehow, as if the connection to my daughter had compressed the distance. Over the next year, I threw myself into 2 projects, building my cliffside house and being the best long-distance father I could be. I flew east once a month to spend weekends with Lily, Amana, and I developed a careful friendship based on our shared love for our daughter. It wasn't always easy. There were arguments about parenting styles, flare-ups of old hurts, moments when seeing her reminded me of everything I'd lost. But there were good moments too. The first time Lily said Dada during a video call, the weekend she took her first steps, toddling from Amana to me and back again, giggling with delight. The look of wonder on her face when I showed her the ocean during her first visit to Seacliff. As my house neared completion, I expanded my architectural practice. Clients from San Francisco and Los Angeles began seeking me out after seeing my work in a design magazine. I hired 2 assistants and rented a larger office space in town. One evening, as I was working late, there was a knock at the office door. Probably Jack, I thought, coming to drag me out for a beer as he often did when he thought I was working too hard. "It's open," I called, not looking up from my drawing. "Your receptionist said I'd find you here." I froze at the sound of Amana's voice. Slowly, I raised my head. She stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. No Lily in sight. "What are you doing here?" I asked, standing up. "Where's Lily?" "With my mother. I needed to see you alone." I gestured to a chair, and she sat down, looking around at the drawings pinned to the walls, the models of buildings on shelves. "You've done well for yourself," she said. "Why are you here, Amana?" She took a deep breath. "I've been offered a job at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. It's a huge opportunity, curator of modern art, exactly what I've always wanted." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely happy for her. "But why tell me in person?" "Because it would mean moving Lily to California, closer to you, but still a major change. I wanted to discuss it face to face." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. "Los Angeles is only a few hours from here." "I know. That's partly why I accepted. Lily needs her father more regularly in her life." We talked for hours, working out logistics, discussing schools, housing, co-parenting arrangements. It felt surreal planning a future that included Amana and Lily nearby, when for so long I'd imagined them remaining distant, connected only by occasional visits and daily video calls. "There's something else," Amana said as our conversation wound down. "I'm seeing someone." A twinge of something not quite jealousy, but discomfort passed through me. "Oh, his name is Michael. He's a professor of art history. Nothing serious yet, but I wanted you to know before Lily starts mentioning him." I nodded, surprised by my lack of strong reaction. "I hope he's good to both of you." "He is." She hesitated. "What about you? Anyone special in your life?" I thought of Sarah, the local bookstore owner I'd been dating casually for a few months. "I'm seeing someone too, taking it slow." Amana smiled, a genuine smile without the sadness that had characterized our interactions since the separation. "Good. You deserve happiness." Before she left, we walked down to the beach together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. We stood side by side, not touching, watching the waves. "I never apologized properly," she said suddenly, "for the affair, for the lies for everything. You did, actually. In the note with Lily's picture. That wasn't enough. I need to say it to your face. She turned to look at me. I'm sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I was quiet for a moment, feeling the ocean breeze on my face. I've forgiven you. I realized as I said it that it was true. Not for you, but for me. And for Lily. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. We walked back to her rental car in comfortable silence. Before getting in, she looked up at me. Your house, the one you're building. Would you show it to me tomorrow? I'd like to see where Lily will be spending time. The next day, I gave her a tour of the nearly completed house. She walked through the rooms, admiring the views, the architecture, the care I'd put into every detail. It's beautiful, she said when we reached Lily's room, decorated with ocean themes and a hand-painted mural of sea creatures. You've created something wonderful here. Thank you. As we stood on the deck overlooking the ocean, I realized something important. The pain was gone. Seeing Amana no longer hurt. The betrayal, the loss, the anger all had faded, replaced by a calm acceptance. We had both moved on, both created new lives, and now those lives would orbit each other because of Lily, but never merge again. I'm glad you found your way here, Amana said, gesturing to the house, the view, but meaning something more. So am I replied, and meant it completely. 3 months later, Amana and Lily moved to Los Angeles. Our new arrangement worked better than I could have hoped. Lily spent weekends with me, holidays were shared, and we both attended her preschool events. Michael turned out to be a decent man who genuinely cared for Lily. Sarah and I continued dating, our relationship deepening gradually. One evening, as Lily and I sat on the deck of my house, watching dolphins play in the distance, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. Daddy, are you still sad that you and Mommy don't live together? I looked down at her serious little face, so like mine in expression, so like her mother's in features. No, sweetheart, I'm not sad anymore. Sometimes people are better as friends than as husband and wife. And we both love you very much. She considered this, then nodded. I'm glad you're not sad. And I like having 2 houses, especially this one. She pointed to the ocean. It has the best view. I laughed and hugged her close. Yes, it does. Later, after putting Lily to bed, I stood on the deck alone, thinking about the strange, winding path that had led me here. If Amana hadn't betrayed me, I would never have left, never discovered Seacliff, never built this house, never found this new version of myself. The thought was both disturbing and liberating. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you really need. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one. And sometimes, just sometimes, betrayal can lead to unexpected blessings. I watched the stars reflect on the dark ocean and felt, for perhaps the first time since that fateful day I discovered Amana's affair, completely at peace. The road ahead was clear now, not endless and unknown as it had seemed that day I drove away from my old life. It had purpose, direction, and most importantly, it had Lily. And that was more than enough.